Welcome, everyone, to Tim's Vinyl Confessions. I'm Tim Durling, and this is a special episode because I've got a first-time co-host on here, but a longtime fan of the show, longtime commenter, and influencer of purchasing decisions at different times. I want to welcome Chez to the show. How are you, sir?
Hey, Tim, I'm great. Thanks for having me. Really excited about this.
This is awesome. Of course, one thing Chez and I have in common is the band that this channel's named after, Kansas, having an album called Vinyl Confessions. And we're here to talk about their recently released, I hesitate to call it a box set when it doesn't come in a box, but I guess it is. It's a 3-disc set. Yep. Another fork in the road, 50 years of Kansas. And get a load of that artwork. That's like the ultimate Kansas store right there. The more you see it, the more you look at it, the more you see in it. This came out on Inside Out Music, distributed by Sony, which, have had access to all the classic catalog. And so, Chez, I'm just curious, like, when did you get into Kansas? How far back do you go with this band?
Well, of course, he grew up here in the classic rock radio hits, Carry On, Wayward Son, Point of No Return, Dust in the Wind, But for me, actually, it was when ironically, Vinyl Confessions came out and the song Play the Game Tonight, it was a big rock radio hit. And that's kind of like, when I was great song, great hook. That's when I was starting listening to the rock radio a lot more, that type of thing. And then what really piqued my interest was the follow-up album, Drastic Measures. The song Fight Fire with Fire, another rock radio hit, great hook. Thought it sounded a little different, a little bit more of a heavier riff. I thought it on that one. And there was a couple of videos. There was a video for that song, Everybody's My Friend Too, which I really liked that song. And that was kind of like my intro. And then, of course, I got this Christmas, like everybody else got this one. And it's funny, a couple of things to say, because I actually think this makes a good companion piece to the box set we're going to talk about today. And then, just kind of went from there and just picking up albums here and there. I'm not complete on them, but was really excited when I read that this was coming out and it was going to hit like all the new albums. And of course, I've kept up with the new stuff. And this was actually a prize from your contest. I had entered your contest, one of your anniversary specials, and you sent that awesome gift packed over. And the latest Kansas album was one of them. This is fantastic if nobody's picked this up yet, and again, well represented on the box set. So, not complete, but definitely kind of on my way type thing.
Awesome. Yeah, that's really cool. You're reading my mind on the best of. I definitely wanted to touch on that.
Yeah.
It's funny because like not everybody got into the band in the heyday. I got into the band. The first thing I ever heard from Kansas was All I Wanted when Power came out in 1986. But I got into them really, really heavily around 92, and they swiftly became one of my favorite bands. And the kind of the crappy thing is it's not the easiest. They're not a band that a lot of people are way into, at least in my circle. I mean, I was delighted when the Contrarians did the panel where we discussed Left Overture versus Point of No Return, because it really just gave me a chance to sink my teeth into talking about this band. But yeah, it's funny because a lot of people know who Kansas are and a lot of people know a handful of the songs, but I think more people really need to delve into this catalog because it's the gift that keeps on giving, because there's kind of something for everybody, right?
It's just, especially kind of when we start talking about this, if you get this, I think we're both going to touch on it. It's going to make you go out and dig a little bit deeper into them. But yeah, just around here, same thing. Apart from those, 4 or 5 rock radio hits, that's pretty much around here. Same thing. Not many people kind of getting into them like a little bit deeper, like you're saying. So definitely a great opportunity. And what cooler way to discover a band that's 50 years old and you got all that back stuff to go back and discover.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, before we get started on the box set, I'm curious, which version did you pick up? Did you pick up the US version, or
picked up the North American version,
Yeah.
which, and I had mentioned to you before, because the Steve Morris albums are not on there, I went along and picked this up because I didn't have this one yet, the
Awesome.
Power CD. But yeah, also, then when I got it and I looked at it, I thought, well, I guess both of them got their advantages. So you'd have to, it wouldn't be too hard to import the other one, but just through Amazon, I think Amazon's only selling the North American version. As far as I know, Amazon, Canada, where we're at type thing.
Yeah.
But definitely the other one would be just as worth to pick up. I think that's got just as much to offer.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm just on going on Discogs as we're speaking here, because I did want to call up the European version. I have some thoughts on why this might be this difference in track listing, but one of the things that is great about picking this up, like, it's interesting, Kansas. So it seemed like this broke a 10-year cycle in a way, because the first album came out in 74. The original single disc Best Of came out in 84. Yeah. 2-disc box set came out in 94. Then they came out with the Sail On box set in 2004, which actually I don't even have yet. I gotta pick that up sometime. And since then, there's been, there was a big gap where there was no new Kansas product there, right? And they started to fix that about 2016. Let's talk about disc 1. Now, obviously, the bait, if you like, for the Kansas fan that has it all, is the first track on here. Can I Tell You, the new 2022 version, re-recording the first song in the first Kansas album, one of the songs that got Don Kirshner interested in signing them. What do you think about this updated version of this early Kansas song?
Loved it. When that was the first thing you heard, so I put disc 1 on, and I was familiar with the original version, but hadn't, heard it in a while. I still don't have that album that it comes off of. So to me, it's almost like hearing a new song, and I love this version of the band. I think they sound great. I love Ronnie's vocals, and I just thought it was a great, kind of nice surprise, a nice way to kick off the album. I thought the song was well done.
Yeah, I like it too. It's very, very similar to the original versions, just an updated production. And I couldn't agree with you more. I think that this band has the last 2 albums that they've done are among their best. And Absence of Presence just was fantastic. There weren't a lot of high points in 2020, but that was one of them. And fantastic. And I've listened to that album. I don't know how many times. I was more than happy to include it as a prize pack. I think that was my 300th episode.
That was the one.
Yeah. And so that's represented here by the title song and Throwing Mountains, actually, I believe the first 2 songs on the album. Are you okay? How do you feel about the tracks that they chose from this most recent of albums?
I thought they were good choices. I love that they included Summer from the Prelude Implicit.
Me too.
That to me should have been a big rock radio hit. And to me, that's a rock radio hit that nobody's heard, unless you get this or you bought that album. Yeah. Such a great song. Just, it says it in the title, like you can picture yourself like driving around summertime, but what a great hook. To me, if that was played on, the radio, that would have been a big hit. That's just one of those buried treasures that you're going to find in this box set, saying, oh, wow, like this is an amazing song, so I love that they included Summer. A great song. Yeah. Yes.
So they also included Crowded Isolation and the Voyage of 818 from the Prelude Implicit, which was first new Kansas album in 16 years. And Summer's a great song, sung by Billy Greer. He's like the unsung, the secret weapon of the band.
Yep.
He's been with them since the Power album. He was with Steve Walsh in the band Streets before that. Great tune. And it would sound perfectly normal. It's fairly straightforward, and it's catchy. It's really, really catchy.
Yeah.
So I agree. I don't think I would have changed anything about what was included from those last 2 albums. But then there's a big gap because there was a 16-year gap. Steve Walsh did not want to do new Kansas material. They were kind of at a standstill. And then until he decided to step down, they got Ronnie Platt, they got Zach Risby, and revamped Kansas lineup, right? So that takes us back to an album which you were the one that put me wise to the fact it was coming out on vinyl. So thank you for that. I purchased that right away. It's got a slightly different cover. Somewhere to Elsewhere was a really unsung album when it came out. It just came and went. Now, I like the songs that they picked off of here, which are Icarus 2, which quickly became like a concert staple. They'd go from Icarus 2 right into Icarus Born of Steel.
Great song. Yeah.
The Coming Dawn, Thanatopsis, good song. I kind of wish that, so they put Distant Vision on here, which is a great tune. I kind of wish they'd have put the version that's on the Device Voice Drum CD, DVD that came up, because I don't believe this song is actually on. I don't have it right in front of me, but I don't think it's on the CD. And as far as the DVD goes, it's only on the enhanced part. So that would have been a cool way to have a readily available version of the live version of that. Plus, it would have, you would have had something from 2002. It wouldn't have been quite the long gap between albums. And other than that, one of my favorite songs on Somewhere to Elsewhere is the song Myriad. I really like that one. And Billy Greer sings another great song on that album, Look at the Time. But as far as, a smattering of songs from the recent albums, it starts off strong. I love the fact that they're going in reverse chronological order.
I really like that too. It's a great, like, I'll be honest with you, I've been through this 3 times and I put it on my phone, right? And I listened to the whole thing right through. I think all 3 discs, I think that the sequencing is really good. It doesn't feel like you're listening to 3 CDs worth. It's just one great song after another. I think the sequencing was done really well. So yeah, I love that first one is like the modern Kansas. It kind of like grabs the listener and says, wait a minute, these guys are still active. And this
band did not stop.
Yeah. And it's, So I love that. Yeah.
Should mention the fact that the liner notes are really cool. The liner notes and the track listing are by a guy named Jeff Wagner. That's a name some of you out there might recognize. The packaging, and it is really cool. Of course, for me, 2 things. I love the fact there's a Vinyl Confessions jacket.
Yeah.
And of course, I Feel Seen. They included
I noticed,
track.
Noticed that, and I thought of you.
Yep. Yeah. So anyway, that takes us back to now. There's 2. I love the fact that a lot of the best known songs, they did not include the studio versions, because how many more times do we need the studio versions? So The Wall and Dust in the Wind come from 1998's Always Never the Same, which was an album they recorded with, I think, London Symphony Orchestra.
An orchestration. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And so they included The Wall and Dust in the Wind from that. You can tell that, Steve Walsh's voice isn't quite what it was, but it's still Steve Walsh. He's one of my favorite vocalists. So
great vocalist. Yeah.
Yeah. It would have been kind of cool if they'd included one of the songs. I believe that there were 3 new songs on that album, and then a cover of Eleanor Rigby. Would have been kind of cool if they'd maybe included one of those. But they end the album, end this disc off strong with a really killer couple of songs from, I think, a killer album, Freaks of Nature from 1995. That was their first independent album. And 2 of the most rocking songs, Desperate Times and Under the Knife.
Couldn't agree more. And not an album that's easy to find, at least down where I'm at. But yeah, it's just like you go through the new stuff. And I agree with you about including different versions of classic hits, because there's always this, right? Where actually, I've got another comment about disc 2 in regards to this one, but this makes a great companion piece, because if you want the versions that you've heard, I mean, we all want those, right? Then you get this, and you're not duplicating, right? It's almost like this one and the new one make a great pair type thing. So if you want the Dust in the Wind original, if you want the Wall original and Carry On Wayward Son, just grab this, still readily available.
Yeah.
And so it just kind of shows you, but I do like that they included something off of each album, right? I like when bands do that. I don't like when, they ignore albums on these anthology type box sets. So, there's still that available, makes a great companion piece, to get those versions,
Yeah, absolutely. One of my favorite songs on Freaks of Nature, and I think it's one of the heaviest Kansas songs, is Black Fathom 4.
Oh, yeah, great.
I think that would have been, but I mean, they had to pick. I think they did a great job. I'm not going to quibble too much. I think I have a feeling we're on the same track when we're going to talk about the best of. So that takes us back. So that's disc one. Disc two is where it differs between like the North American version and the UK version. I've called up the track listing on Discogs. So the first 5 songs on disc 2 of the UK version are from the 2 MCA albums, the Steve Morse years, In the Spirit of Things and Power that you already showed off. So there's House on Fire and Rainmaker from In the Spirit of Things. And then there's Silhouettes in Disguise, Secret Service, and Three Pretenders from Power. Now, in order to do that, so disc 2 on the UK version actually has 15 tracks on it. The version that you and I both have, each disc has 13 tracks on it. So they had to kick off a couple of other previous songs. I'm glad that they included these songs. I'm a little, they're not the songs that I would have personally chosen, just my opinion, but I don't think you can go wrong with either of those albums. But I'm really surprised they didn't put All I Wanted, because that was a top 20 single for the band. And it's a song a lot of people would know.
Yeah, it charted. So that was a hit in America. It actually, I looked it up. You're right. That was a top 20,
not number 19, single, which is not bad.
Yeah.
I mean, that was first I saw the video. That's the first time I ever heard of a band called Kansas.
Yeah, that was played all over the radio here too. So yeah, I was kind of surprised when I looked at that version that was left off also. Yeah.
But why, I wonder, I have a theory about this. Are there no songs from either of those MCA albums on the North American version? I mean, so they go right from 1995 all the way back to 1983, and there doesn't need to be that much of a gap. You've got 86 and 88 in there.
Yeah.
I have one thought on why that is, and I'm curious to what you think. I'm wondering if Inside Out Music couldn't secure the rights from Universal to get those tracks, but there are ways around it, because they could have put the Preacher from Device Voice Drum. They could have put Taking in the View from which they did a wonderful version of on I think Point of No Return Live and Beyond. They could have had some of those songs represented. Even some of the songs off that King Biscuit Live album that came out from 1989, but they didn't. They chose to not go that route. Do you think that's why maybe these songs are absent?
I'm thinking so, because those two were on that different label, and now everything you read about rights and securing rights, and they're not as lenient on signing over rights, that type of thing. So I'm thinking, I agree with you there was other ways around it, that type of way. What I did like was that the band was very transparent about it. Like in the press release, they said, there's going to be 2 different versions. And another thing I like that they did, a lot of times when you get these announcements, they don't list the track listing, or you go to order it. You can go to Amazon and they don't have a track listing. They had everything right on both versions. So they're very transparent. So you can kind of see, okay, well, I could still get this one, or I could get both of them, that type of thing. To me, it would have to be a rights issue. And actually that kind of brings me to, like, this easily could have been like a 4 CD one, that type of thing. Who knows? Maybe that's down the road, that type of thing. But I agree with you. I think it was probably a rights issue. Other than that, I can't really see, why. Like, it's the band, right? So
yeah. So there's 2 things that come to mind. One, obviously Universal, maybe they demanded just too much money to license those tracks. But the other thing is, anybody that works at Universal should be apologizing all over themselves for that fire that they had in 2008, I think it was. So, which there's 2 things there. They should say, oh yeah, you can, but how was the UK able to get access to the masters of these albums that supposedly were destroyed in the fire? I mean, anything that was on MCA would have fallen under that, unfortunately, that banner. It's strange to me, because that's one of the first things because automatically when I saw that there wasn't anything from Power and In the Spirit of Things on the version that I was ordering, and I knew what I was getting. Like you said, they were very transparent about it. But that's the first thing I thought of was Universal. The fire, how were they able to get it in the UK, and why couldn't they make But that's just minor quibbles. But I would say if anybody did get the North American version like Chez and I did, do yourself a favor, pick up Power, and pick up In the Spirit of Things too. I think Power is the superior album by far, but they're both really good. And especially if you're into modern day Deep Purple, if you like Steve Morse, his guitar playing is amazing on these albums. And I've said this before, Power should have been a huge album, should have been a huge hit album for them. It should have been the album that did for Kansas what 90125 did for Yes. Introduce them to a whole new generation and then let people go back and discover the previous stuff. Because it was very much geared towards commercial, AOR, CHR radio. And they just did it really, really, really well. I mean,
and it's a strange one how it didn't really take off because it had a hit single. So it was being played on non-rock stations too. It had the video, and that was my intro to Steve Morse, when he got into Deep Purple, I remembered him right away from Kansas, and, but yeah, it's a strange one. Even like the version I picked up, I don't know if you can see it. It's on the Music on CD label, which is an offshoot of the Music on Vinyl, vinyl pressing label, and that's out of the UK. So this isn't even like this had to be imported type thing. So I don't know. It might even be out of print here. Those two albums, because this one definitely.
I think they both ended up deleted, unfortunately, and I have to blame MCA for that because the band delivered an album that was easily accessible to radio and video. I think if they'd been on Atlantic Records or if they'd somehow re-signed with Sony, might have been a different story. But
yeah, for sure.
We're going to move on from there. So we dropped back to 1983, talking about the North American version. 3 songs from Drastic Measures, the second of the 2 with John Elephant. Interesting song selection. Obviously, they kind of had to put Fight Fire with Fire on here. It was a big rock radio hit. But they actually put the last 2 songs on the album, End of the Age and Incident on a Bridge, which I thought were really interesting choices. Now, before I'll get to your opinion on what they picked from Drastic Measures, I think what would have been a nice touch is if they'd put Perfect Lover on here. Because as diehard Kansas fans know, past the late 90s, when you pick up that Best of Kansas CD, it originally came out in 1984 with a song called Perfect Lover, which had John Elephant on vocals. It was a new studio track. And when they remastered it in the late 90s, that became no longer available. Now, I don't think it's that hard to pick up an earlier version of Best of Kansas because it's in a lot of spots, but it was a rock radio hit. It charted on mainstream rock. I just don't understand when these songs kind of go rogue and they put, by the same token, they could have put the song Wheels on here from the 94 box set, but Perfect Lover would have fit right in along. They could have taken off one of the Drastic Measures tracks. That's just my opinion. How do you feel about that?
Yeah. The first thing I thought of, I said, what a great opportunity to include that song because there was that repress. I have the version with Perfect Lover on it. You can still see my best value sticker on there, So that was dropped. And when it was remastered and repressed, those other three songs. So if you go out and buy a new version of that, that's the one you're going to get. I'm sure you can still find that.
Yeah.
But I thought, what a perfect place to put it is on this new collection, right? Like this, and it was another hit, right? And it's a great song. Another, because I consider the disc 2 of this package, the AOR disc, right?
Yeah,
a lot of rock radio hits on there.
Yeah.
So I agree with you there that I was surprised that one wasn't on there. I like all the 3 songs from Drastic Measure. I got a soft spot for Everybody's My Friend. I always liked that song.
It was a single, right?
Yeah, it was a single, and there was that video to it. And, I always like that song, kind of like a nice pop rocker, and I was kind of surprised that wasn't on there. That got a lot of radio play here too. So again, you never know what's going on. I guess you can't put everything on, but now we can see, hey, this could have been one of those long boxes with, hey, let's get that 4th disc out there. So those are my kind of like observations too for the Drastic Measures. Yeah.
Now, the 3 songs they put on from Vinyl Confessions, I can't really argue with. I mean, Play the Game Tonight, top 20 single, kind of had a have been on here. Great song. Crossfire and Windows, two of my favorites from that album. The only other song that, if they were going to put four songs from that album, I would have put Right Away, for the same reason that we just discussed. That charted. Yeah. That was a hit somewhere in the 70s, I think, on the Billboard Hot 100. At the very least, I think they should have put on everything that actually had a chart position. But there are time constraints. But yeah, I think the three songs they picked for Vinyl Confessions were three of the strongest songs. So that's how kind of how to feel about that. And Audio Vision's much the same. They actually put four songs.
Most represented album, I think, on the North American version, which I love. I love Audio Visions, but that kind of surprised me that that was the most represented album with four cuts on it.
Oddly enough, two of the four songs, Hold On and No One Together, were on the original best of. So they didn't really need to put those versions on there. Like another song that charted that didn't hit the top 40 was Got to Rock On. I love Audio Visions so much. I mean, that is one of my favorites for sure. I love Relentless. I mean, there's so many songs they could have gone with, but and No One Together was a song I think they played a lot in concert. Hold On obviously was a top 40 hit. It actually hit number 40, just barely. And that winds up with the end of the 70s, three songs from another great album, very, very dark, moody album, Monolith. And I actually love the three songs that they picked for Monolith. Even though they did leave off a top 40 single with People of the South Wind, I love the fact that they put On the Other Side, Angels Have Fallen, and especially How My Soul Cries Out For You. What are your thoughts on the Monolith choices?
On the Other Side, excellent song. What a great, another one that a lot of people probably haven't heard, and the last track, How My Soul Cries For You, another cool song, another great riff, in that song, I thought. But yeah, I think that's an album that, I think a lot of people who were listening to rock radio in the 80s are familiar with Audio Vision's Drastic Measures, Vinyl Confessions. And, this one here might be a lost album, the one that came before that one. But again, what a treat. You buy this and, you put that second disc on and it ends with those songs. And it's like, wow, like another great three songs. I love those choices that they put on there from a really great album too.
Yeah, it opens up the door to the 70s too. Angels Have Fallen, Steve Walsh's vocals in that song are just out of this world. How My Soul Cries Out For You, what a unique song. I mean, how many songs can you think of that stop right up in the middle and then there's a sound of a bar fight and then a drum solo and then it goes back into the song. Great choices. So disc 3 starts off with, probably the best known song, Carry On Wayward Son, live from 1978's Two for the Show. I'm glad they didn't go with the studio version. Again, it's something different. It's kind of a shock when it comes on. It doesn't have the a cappella intro. I think people might be surprised to find out they didn't always do it that way in concert before it went on to become quite, the iconic song that it did.
For sure.
I think that it would have been cool if they'd have put Closet Chronicles on here, because that was one of the songs on the remastered best of from Two for the Show that didn't make the original Two for the Show CD.
Yeah.
But that's a minor quibble and it's a long song. So I can see why. Is there anything from their first live album that you would have also included, maybe in lieu of another song that is in its studio form here? Well,
there's one. Yeah, I thought they would have included at least two songs from Two for the Show. I'm surprised they only included one. But seeing how they didn't, like, one glaring omission, which really surprised me. Like, there is no Point of No Return on this.
Yeah.
And I was just like shocked. Huge hit, right? So if you weren't going to go that route where you didn't want to duplicate the ones from this, right? I know that was played on Two for the Show, right? What a great opportunity to have that version. So, like, to me, I thought I missed it. I thought I looked and I said, oh, I just missed it. And I said, wait a minute, it's not on, right? Like, that one really surprised me. So I thought, maybe one more from Two for the Show. And I thought that would have been a nice inclusion,
That would, I would have, again, if we had a fourth disc of this, I would have maybe included the version that's on Point of No Return Live and Beyond from
Oh yeah.
2021, brought it
Yeah.
right up to date. But yeah, that's the only one. Well, that one and People of the South Wind and All I Wanted, I guess. They have 7 top 40 singles in the States. People of the South Wind isn't really one that it's not really a Kansas classic like Point of No Return is, although, it did chart. They could have included the acoustic version of that too. That's on, I think, is on Left Overture Live and Beyond. Both of those releases are fantastic. But, these are we're just big fans talking about these. In some cases, I can see where they kind of did a balancing act between the fan that's already got all the stuff and maybe the curious fan. And I think they struck a pretty decent balance. Now, there's only 2 from the Point of No Return album, one of which may be kind of predictable, which is Portrait.
Right.
But Sparks of the Tempest, I wouldn't have expected. I would have thought they would have put Paradox or, I don't know, something, another track.
Yeah. And kind of surprising there. But then again, like, what a great song, Sparks of the Tempest. Like, to me, like, disc 3, like Portrait, Sparks of the Tempest, and the Miracles Out of Nowhere. To me, when you hear those 3 songs, I think those are the ones that are going to make somebody go out and buy those albums. Like, like, it's just so great. Like, even like Portrait, like, didn't really get, I know it's kind of like one of their classic songs, but I don't remember it getting a lot of radio play down around here. So that could be looked at as a new song. But yeah, like, I love Sparks of the Tempest. Like, what a great song. And, kind of like, that's the one, along with the other 2 I mentioned, that are going to probably make somebody, discover, and let's go look for these albums. Yeah.
Just looking at the tracks on disc 3, I wonder, and it wouldn't surprise me, a lot of these songs feature the late Robbie Steinhardt on vocals. So maybe they went out of their way. So you've got Sparks of the Tempest, Miracles Out of Nowhere, Child of Innocence, Down the Road, parts of Song for America, Death of Mother Nature Suite. Yeah, it's really heavy, like for the earlier albums on songs that Robbie was a part of. I bet the only other thing I would have put on from 2 for the show was Lonely Wind, which actually charted. The live version of Lonely Wind, which was originally on the first album, it charted somewhere in the top 100. But that's a minor thing. Of course, Left Overture. I think it's good that they only picked 2 songs from Left Overture and Point of No Return, because those are the 2 biggest selling Kansas albums. And Miracles Out of Nowhere, great. I don't know if I would have put Magnum Opus, and I like it. I think that I would have gone with something like either Questions of My Childhood or maybe Opus Insert.
Opus Insert, yeah.
And see, Magnum Opus is 827. You could have put a couple of slightly shorter songs. Again, it's a minor thing. Now, if you've got Icarus 2 on here, you kind of have to have Icarus Born on Wings of Steel. Forever a concert staple. And I'm really glad they went with Child of Innocence, because that's one of the heavier Kansas songs. And I think people people need to know that they've got some rocking songs. And in the earlier part of their career, they've got songs that were as heavy as anybody.
Yeah, I had that same note down. Like, there are some really cool riffs that you're going to discover, and you're going to think, I didn't think that they had songs that they were this heavy, and that's definitely one of them. Great song, like, great riff, just fantastic song. And I think on that disc 3, which is the beginning of the career, you're going to hear a lot of those heavier riffs, and I think you're going to be surprised, is that, wow, these guys had some pretty heavy songs.
Yeah, Devil Game, Death of Mother Nature Suite, however you say it, Bellex's, I don't even know how you say it, but yeah, good choices for these early ones. You kind of, I have no problem with them putting Song for America on here. It might have been cool if they'd have put maybe the edited version just to have something different. But on the other hand, when I hear the edited version, I always wish I was listening to the full length version. So, I really don't have much issue with most of disc 3. There's really nothing more I would add. It's really the second disc where, not that I have any problem with what's on it, but it's more of, I guess it's just the issue of being into this band and knowing how many more great songs they have.
Yeah.
But hopefully this is something that Sony does right and gets out there in the marketplace so that people see it and say, hey, it's Kansas. Maybe I'll pick this up. Don't price it ridiculously. And I'd love to see a renaissance happen with this band because
Yeah.
to me,
Yeah.
they should be up there with Led Zeppelin and Queen and the biggest of the biggest classic rock bands. They're like kings of the second tier, but they're so much better than that. So,
Yeah. And they're still relevant, still making great albums, and this great history that they have. So I think it was like, I got really excited when I read about this. And, I thought, what a great idea, right? To bring like up to speed, right? You had mentioned that box set, Sail On, right?
yeah,
Haven't seen that one. I think that that Essential series, that was from Sony, I think, puts it out.
yeah,
I think there is an Essential Kansas. I
there
think
is.
it's, yeah, 2 discs. And even that, I was kind of looking at the track listing. That's way different than like this one and the other one, So
Yeah.
I think that, and then the box set, and what you're saying is that there is like so much out there to appreciate from these guys. And you mentioned the word charted a lot when we were talking about this. I think people will be surprised how many charted hits they had. It just wasn't those songs that classic rock radio was kind of hooked in on. Like, they had hit singles that went beyond that, and it's more than 1 or 2. So, that's another thing you kind of, and again, like you said, a lot of those weren't on here. So again, just more good stuff to check out.
That's right. Yeah, if we're talking strictly in the States and bands of their ilk,
Yeah,
they had more top 40 singles than Yes. They had more top 40 singles than Rush. They had more top 40 singles than ELP. They really straddled the line.
Yeah, the ELP one is surprising that they had more top 40s than ELP.
Yeah.
Yeah, but even like Yes, like I would have thought in the 70s, Yes would have charted a little bit more, but I guess the radio just wasn't ready for those long epic songs,
Right.
But Kansas, they kind of balance that line really well between the longer proggier songs and the shorter kind of AOR type songs. I just thought that they walked that line really well, that balance between the two.
Yeah. It's just one of the things I love about this band is the variety. If I want to hear something very proggy, they've got it. If I want to hear something more commercial, that's the 80s side of things. There's just so much to this band. I think people might be surprised when they look at this and think, wow, they've been around for 50 years. Maybe they haven't thought about this band being around that long. So yeah, it's definitely, I would, recommend this to anybody who's ever been curious about this band. If you like Carry On Wayward Son, Dust in the Wind, Point of No Return, you're going to hear stuff like that. You're going to hear stuff that you didn't realize that they did. I know that when I first got into the band, the Best Of is one of the first things I got. And I remember being very surprised the first time I heard Fight Fire with Fire, because I didn't know they had just straightforward rock songs like this.
Yeah.
And I didn't look at it as a detriment. As a matter of fact, that just reminded me of a quote in here from their current keyboard player, Tom Brislin. And he kind of summed up exactly what I've always thought. Now the question is, can I find it? But basically it's talking about the fact that they do have all of these different parts of their sound. Now I should have had this picked out, but just bear with me here. Paraphrasing here because I can't seem to be able to find it. But Brislin said he was getting into Kansas right around the Vinyl Confessions Drastic Measures period, but he was getting into their earlier albums at the time when Fight Fire with Fire was being played on the radio. And he said it took him a while to reconcile the notion that this was the same entity. And it's true. There's so much variety within the confines of this band, but no matter who was in the band, no matter who was singing, no matter who was playing guitar, you kind of know it's Kansas when you hear it. There's a consistency there. And I don't know if it's, I think Phil Ehart, I can pick out his drumming on just about anything, and then Richard Williams. I don't know if Richard Williams has a distinctive guitar sound, but there's a guitar there just seems to be a feel to it. You just know you're listening to Kansas. So maybe it's that foundation of those two guys who are still in the band to this day. And
just one other wonder I have, normally what happens when you get these retrospectives like this, and that it is their 50th year, I wonder if this is like the precursor to a reissue campaign. That's the first thing I thought of. Are we going to start to see more of these on vinyl? Are we going to get CD reissues? Is there another box set? Because that's kind of like the way these things go. You get that retrospective, and then you start like being their 50th year. You wonder what else they got planned. So who knows? Maybe reissues coming up this year. Like I just kind of wondered about that. If we don't, that's fine because this is great. If we do that, that's even better.
Yeah. The best thing I can say about this band at this point is that it's and I can't say this about all my favorite veteran bands. The thing that would excite me the most is to find out they're working on a new album.
Yeah,
some bands, when they've been around this long, you're like, oh boy, I don't know. The last couple weren't that great, but these guys are just firing on all cylinders. So if they announce a new studio album, I'd be way more excited about that. But reissue campaigns serve the purpose. It gets the band name out there. It gets them on store shelves. So I'm all for it.
Yeah, I'm thinking it's one or the other, new album this year or some kind of more reissues. But yeah, new album. Yeah, let's have another one. That's fantastic. Can't wait to see what they come up with next.
And they need to tour Canada more, right?
Yeah.
They definitely need to tour. I've only seen them once in concert. They need to come up here more than they do.
Yeah, definitely. They like to tour, and they got back on when they could go back on, like when all the other bands started touring again. They were right back out there promoting that latest album. So yeah, definitely.
So Ches, thank you very much for this. This was great discussion of a great band that more people need to not just say, oh yeah, I know who they are. You need to dig in because you'll find some good stuff in the Kansas catalog. And this new just released box set is as good as anything. Another fork in the road, 50 years of Kansas. You can follow them. I think it's kansasband.com. They're very active on social media. And if they're coming near you, go see them because you'll hear the songs that but you'll come away from it thinking, I had no idea they had so much great music.
Yeah. Well, thank you for having me, Tim. This was great. Really enjoyed it.
So Ches, where can people find you out there? I know that you're on Instagram quite a lot. Like, what have you got going on right now?
Don't really have a channel. I do, there's the channels that I follow and I comment, follow TVC, love all the programming that you guys do. Love when you get the panel together and do like the top albums of 1987 and that type of stuff. So, you just probably see me on, in a lot of the YouTube rock channels I like to follow. So I kind of like to just be a commenter and just enjoy the great, videos that are put out. And, I've been turned on to a lot of new stuff. And I also enjoy going back and, watching people's videos and saying, hey, this is something that's been out for a while. I never really checked out, and I'm going to listen to it again with a different ear type thing. So you can probably find me in the comments on, TVC or some of the other channels. But yeah, all good.
Awesome. Thanks a lot, Ches. And
thank you, Tim.
Thanks everyone for watching this edition of Tim's Vinyl Confessions.